and with Dr. Jenny Sartori, who's the Associate Director of the Northeastern University Jewish Studies Program and the Co-Director of the Adoption and Jewish Identity Project.
So welcome to everybody. I have been following the progress of this film for quite some time, and so I was really thrilled when we first started discussions with the Film Festival about sponsoring the film and to see this film on the list. So as Judith mentioned, I am the Associate Director of the Jewish Studies Program at Northeastern University, and Northeastern has particular expertise in Jewish cultural studies and particularly issues of diversity within Jewish communities worldwide. So this is a particularly meaningful film for us to be sponsoring. And as Judith also mentioned, my particular research focus is on adoption in the Jewish community with the Adoption and Jewish Identity Project with Jane Giberman, who is sitting right here in the audience. And this film obviously is not about adoption per se, but I think we can see that there are some common themes here about the nature of family, in particular, kind of the relationship between biological parenthood and social parenthood, clearly the meaning of race in today's society, also about how families communicate about, or don't communicate, about very important and often very challenging subjects. So I want to really thank Lacey for making a film that brings up these very thought-provoking issues in a very thoughtful and meaningful way. So I'm sure there are a lot of questions in the audience. I'm going to take advantage of my role as moderator to ask the first question or two, but I will do my best not to monopolize and to open it up to Lacey. I want to start by asking a question particular to I think this particular film festival as a Jewish film festival. I know the film is screening a lot of different kinds of festivals. But I want to ask a question about Jewish identity here. It's very clear that the Jewish community and Jewish identity is something that's been very important to you throughout your life, growing up and remains so today, and particularly through your work with the Behola Show, which maybe you can talk a little bit about. But in the film, what I noticed was that Jewishness kind of takes a back seat in the second half of the film after you really discover the truth about your biological parentage, and kind of comes back at the very end in the scene of your wedding, and also the scene which you reflect on your last name. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about your experiences in the Jewish community as a person of color, both growing up, but then particularly today. And I'm wondering if you feel that you kind of navigate the Jewish community differently when you were growing up as a white person, and today when you self-identify very much as a person who is biracial and a person of color.
Absolutely. So first off, I just want to really say thank you to the Boston Jewish Film Festival for having me here and for the film here. It means a lot to be back. This is the Boston premiere of the film. It means a lot to be showing it in Harvard Square, where I feel I became a filmmaker when I was in law school. Actually, it was a really amazing opportunity where the law school allowed me to try out being a filmmaker, and it was really what led me to understand that I loved doing it, and that was really what I wanted to do. So it feels very special to be back here today and walking around campus and then here with all of you. So thank you for coming, and thank you to the festival. But to your question, I would say that really when I started doing this film, where I was very much still living in a racial closet, and I was struggling with this idea of being both Black and Jewish. And how, I felt like a lot of times you see this idea of Blacks and Jews and how they come together, they don't come together. That was a lot of how the conversation was. And I realized that I was really struggling to integrate those two things within myself. I had, as you said, kind of really grew up with being Jewish was synonymous with being white. And I realized, when I was living in this racial closet, that I had to integrate my own identities to keep on going. And I became really fascinated by looking at other examples of other people who were also kind of racially and ethnically diverse and who themselves were going through that process. And I actually, when I started this film, thought that that was what I was going to do. I was going to do a film about being Black and Jewish, more in a broad sense. And it evolved because I realized that for me, I really needed to uncover the family secrets and learn how to live with that in order to integrate my own identity. But it also led me to do a lot of work. As you said, I work with Behold Shown, which is an organization based out of San Francisco, and I really run the New York arm of it that works around the racial and ethnic diversity issues within the Jewish community. And I really believe pretty strongly, a lot of people ask me about, oh, you don't deal with kind of your Jewish identity in the second half of the film, but I feel like my Jewish identity was very much established, but what I had to figure out is how to integrate it. And so that was less about figuring out how I felt about Judaism, but figuring out how I could be both things at the same time. And I think being both things means that you can walk into any space and not leave a piece of yourself behind. And I think that's a lot of things, whether you're Black or Jewish or other identities that are competing, a lot of people struggle with that. And so that was really what I had to go through figuring out. I think, in terms of your question about how I experienced the Jewish community, I did experience it as much more a space which was asking me to conform. Was asking me to kind of be one thing. And I really think that, I grew up in a white Ashkenazi family, and I still identify as an Ashkenazi Jew, very much so. Like, those are the traditions that I connect to. But it was about, first, me having to expand my idea of what being Jewish was, and then also I now work with communities to push them to also expand their ideas of what it means to be Jewish.
I guess as a follow-up question to that, do you feel like, as you are finding your place in the Black community, do you feel like as a Black or biracial person who is also Jewish, do you think that you are, in a way, encouraging the Black community to also expand its sort of thoughts about about what is Black?
Yes, but at the same time I have to say, and I think a lot of these experiences are very specific. So I had a very specific experience where I kind of discovered my Black identity, really came to terms with it in these institutions of higher learning, where the Black community that I was exposed to really more, and it's not everybody's experience with the Black community, but for me personally, one of the reasons I feel really comfortable is because in the Black community, it wasn't weird for them that I was Jewish as well. The Black communities that I was a part of, specifically at Georgetown, here at Harvard, they were kind of used to that, understanding the full diversity of what it could mean to be Black. In a way that, to be honest with you, when I was interacting more with the Jewish communities in those campuses, it wasn't the same. I got a lot more questions about being Black in the Jewish spaces at Harvard and Georgetown than I did in the Black spaces. The Black spaces got it that I was Jewish, and that didn't seem like they had a pretty decent understanding of what it meant to be Jewish.
That's interesting. I have a zillion questions I could ask Lacey, but I want to take this time to open it up to the audience because I'm sure all of you have questions as well. So I'm just going to throw it out there and try my best to see who's out there. I'm going to start right here in the front row.
Are you raising your children Jewish?
The question was, am I raising my children Jewish? And the short answer would be yes. We're raising them to know that they're Jewish, to be associated with Jewish practices, but I'm also raising them to know who they are completely and totally. My husband is not Jewish, and although he's not religious per se, his parents are, and I feel like I want them to understand fully who they come from, and I don't find that confusing or anything like that.
A hand back there. Yes, you.
So it was very painful to watch the last interview with your father, and I couldn't help wondering that the presence of the camera, which had to have been run by people outside the family, I assume, could only have made it feel more uncomfortable. Did you think about that when you were raising that topic with your dad?
Yeah, I thought about all of these things a lot. So I decided, I thought long and hard about making a film and why I wanted to make the film, and how, for me, really the power of making the film was about modeling the process for other people, about dealing with family secrets, which we can talk more about in a bit. But specifically to your question, I just thought about making this film. I thought about whose story it was to tell. And when I decided to make the film, as you can see, I was shooting for a long time. When I actually decided to make a film, and in particular bring in a camera person, first of all, I chose really carefully who that person was, and we shot for over the course of 3 years. 95% of that footage was with one person who, by the end of it, he went from, staying in a hotel to like staying with my parents. He spent many, many holidays with us. So everybody knew him pretty well. But when I did start the film, I kind of went to everybody in my family and I said, I'm going to do this film and I'd like to ask you to participate in it, but you don't have to. And so I feel, and I'm very grateful to everybody in my family that they were willing to move forward with me, including my father, who obviously, as you can tell, as you are suggesting, I think would have chosen otherwise, but decided to do it. And partially, there were moments where various people, including him, did not want to participate, and I was okay with that. But I think in the end, because I was going to share the story no matter what, people wanted to talk about it on camera. I mean, with my father, in terms of it being painful for him, he deals with it a certain way, right? It's not really, in the end, something he wants to talk about. So I don't know if it was so much the camera or just really the conversation in the end being painful for him, for better or worse.
I'd like to ask just a follow-up question to that about kind of the relationship between the evolution of your identity as this whole process was unfolding and the making of the film. Because it does seem like you had started the process of the film and having the conversations with your family on film before the process was done, the evolution of the identity, and certainly before you seem to have had the conversations with your father. So as you were having all these conversations with your other family members, your father, what did he know? Did he know you were making a film at that point?
Yeah, I mean, my father was involved in the filming. Again, we were filming lots of stuff. You can see we were filming for years. And so, yeah, he was always involved from the very beginning in the filming process. The way we filmed, though, is a lot of the substantive conversations we didn't have until later on into filming. And the way I look at it, specifically, going back to your question for a second, is having lived it and obviously knowing all the characters pretty well, is the camera was not the painful part. I think that the idea of whether or not the camera was there or it wasn't there, or we were talking about this publicly or not, and it was something I was fully and completely owning, the camera actually doesn't make it more painful, having gone through it. And in fact, to be honest with you, the film being out has been incredible and really transformative for all of us. In fact, I feel my father, from the film being out, although he does not stand out in front of it publicly, seems to understand it better than he ever did before, and has actually communicated to me that he supports me and is proud of me for the work I've done. So I actually think that the idea, and this is a good moment to talk about this, is that, and actually could you put that slide up for a second? Can you hear me? Okay, you can hear me. Really for me, this is not just about sharing my story, but as I said before, it's about modeling process. And family secrets and denial, I think, are just really, really painful for a lot of people. And they're things that people hold on to for a long time and don't work through. And so part of this project is about not just sharing my story, but also using it as a tool to share giving people a tool to share their little white lies as well. And so you see that we've set up an online portal, which is just kind of the beginning of what we consider to be a longer project, where we're asking other people to share their little white lies. And we look at little white lies, we define it as family secrets plus denial. Family secrets being something that we define as everybody knows but nobody talks about. And just this idea of the fact, I look at many people who just hold on to this stuff for so long, and it's incredibly, incredibly painful. And so for me, it is about the power of having these conversations, the power of telling the truth, but also the power then of acceptance and moving on. So I really want to use the film as a tool to do that. And so beyond just giving people in the beginning a space to share not only their little white lie, but also what motivates them to share it, is the beginning step. And then we're going to develop kind of like discussion tools and things like that so people can use it in a variety of different settings. And just to start, I just want to say up there, if you, on your way out, you have a little white lie that I invite you to share. Beyond the fact that we have an online link, we also have pieces of forms that you can do so here. And it's been, if you look on the website, it's been pretty powerful to see all of these different stories and people who it really touches and connects to. So, I think, to be honest with my father, I think he's somebody who hasn't really fully worked through it. That's the pain you see, and holding on to things. And I think it's really this question of how do we work through things, accept it, and then figure out a way to move forward.
Thank you. Right there, right in the middle.
I wanted to just thank you. I thought it was powerful on so many levels. And in addition to raising the issues around race and diversity and sort of denial and discomfort around that, I'm really wanted to thank you for the piece around lives. And I wanted to remark on, I think, both your vulnerability and your bravery and continuing to push. You know, it's sort of like you have to go back for several conversations. And I think that's great, just modeling. And my question is how you stayed open and compassionate through it.
It's an interesting question. So the question was, how did I stay open and compassionate through the process? I mean, I think because in the end, really, I wasn't being motivated by like anger. You know, I was really being motivated by this idea of understanding like my own privilege, which is like coming from a really loving, supportive family in the end. And really understanding that and not wanting to, I mean, part of what, you know, why I kept this secret for so long and I kind of went between these two worlds is because of wanting to maintain that relationship with my family. So when I went into doing a project like this, it wasn't, you know, to kind of, you know, just air all my stuff. It was really to work through it. And to work through it to a place where I could understand and accept as best I could, you know. And I think part of accepting is accepting that you don't fully understand, and there's no real answers, and people don't always think through their behavior or understand the consequences or any of that. But it was about really pushing it, really wanting to be in a good place with everybody, really wanting to understand it the best I could, and then also get to that place which you see in the film where I have to just accept it and kind of let it go at the same time. So I think what really motivated me is understanding that in the end I was carrying this baggage around and that was really hurting me, and that the best way to let go of that baggage was not just to justify that I was right, you know, that other people were wrong, but to really understand it and understand even my own psychology around it. I mean, I'm really fascinated with this idea of denial, right? That you can almost create your own reality, that a lot of times people don't just lie. They're less lying to other people, they're lying to themselves. And so how do, you know, and I really wanted to track everybody's denial, like even my own, you know, I learned my own denial. Denial was learned behavior for me, from my family, but there's a period of time where deep down I knew, and you know, between like my parents split up and I went to college, like I feel like deep down I knew, but I wasn't really willing to face it, and that was my real period of denial, and I think that that's really important to own as well.
So unfortunately, we only have time for one more question. I want to also look up in the balcony, make sure I'm not missing anybody. Yes, I'll take the question from the balcony up there.
Hi there. I was really interested by the conversation with your college friends about the inclusivity of Blackness as an identity and almost the opposite. I mean, I think it helped me understand whiteness and its exclusivity. But then there was this moment where your friend said, actually, I think that's cool if you still identify as white, because that would really shake things up a bit. And I was just wondering what you think about that. Like, is identifying as biracial as close as you can still get to identifying as white? And then conversely, like, you know, people sort of say, well, you're black or you're biracial. You know, again, with black being able to hold all of that, while white we can't. But is it possible that white eventually could hold that?
Well, to answer part of your question, like, is it that the closest I ever get to still identifying as being white? I'd say, you know, yes and no. Like, I think I do kind of have had a unique experience. I'm not the only person who's ever had it, but unique experience of truly believing that I was white. And so I think there's some things that I still embody. Like, I still feel like I carry a certain amount of white privilege when I walk into spaces that I kind of was raised with. And I don't think that always has to be, you know, that's always a horrible thing. I'm obviously conscious of it though, you know, in a way that a lot of people aren't. I think the lack of consciousness is where it gets tricky sometimes. But in terms of like, listen, in the end, race is a construct, you know? And so it's a construct that came from a relatively, you know, negative place. And I think that it's something that has nonetheless bonded people together. So there are now, you know, kind of positive elements to it where it does reflect in community, and that's obviously things that I connected with over my development. So I think that at this point, more than anything, we just need to be able to have these conversations. And I think kind of when I see my friends saying that space is not that it's like, there's this like power in me identifying as white. I mean, I think she specifically says there's power in white people seeing you as part of them. So I think it is honestly about this consciousness piece. And that I think we need to talk about whiteness more. And then when we're really fully, when we're really fully doing that, then maybe we can talk about it. Because really, I mean, the question is, do we want to move past it eventually? This whole post-racial thing, which right now is just really not an effective term in my opinion, because of the fact that there are so many issues that need to be dealt with openly and not just like waxed over. But so it's kind of like, who knows until we can really talk about it openly and honestly.
So thank you all for coming, and most of all, thank you to Lacey for making such a documentary.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you so much. I just want to tell you guys, because I always forget to say this, where we're going with this project from here. We were touring around festivals around the country still, and then we're going to be doing a limited theatrical release starting this Friday in New York, and then moving to LA and San Francisco and the DC area. And then we're going to be on PBS in March. And on Entertainment Lens. And so I really encourage you to please, if you felt touched by the film and you think other people would like to see it, please spread the word. It really means a lot in terms of getting it out. And also we do have a Facebook page, which just really does, it's a great way of connecting with people at facebook.com/littlewhitelive the film. And so I really just encourage, you guys to please stay in touch, and thank you again.